You believe they are distant. You believe they are silent. You believe that because there is no message, no call, no visible movement, nothing is happening. But this belief is only born from the senses, and the senses have always been late to the truth. What you do not yet fully realize is that the deepest movements never announce themselves loudly. They begin invisibly, internally, and they grow there long before they ever appear on the surface of life. Your specific person feels you more than you think, not because of effort, not because of force, and not because of repetition, but because consciousness does not need permission to communicate. Feeling travels faster than words. Assumption travels faster than action. Identity travels faster than distance. And when you change within yourself, you do not move alone. You are never isolated in your inner world. Every assumption you accept as true ripples outward and touches the one you are focused upon. You were taught to believe that connection requires proximity, that influence requires action, and that love requires chasing. But all of that is learned illusion. What truly connects two people is not behavior but agreement of states. When you occupy a state where you are loved, desired, remembered, and missed, you are not pretending. You are tuning yourself to a frequency that already exists. And when you tune yourself to it, the one connected to that frequency must respond, because they are not separate from it. The reason you think they don't feel you is because you are looking for proof before permission. You are asking the world to confirm what you have not fully accepted. But the law does not work that way. The outer world echoes the inner decision. And until you decide, truly decide, that your presence in their life is natural, inevitable, and emotionally significant, the echo remains delayed. Yet even in the delay, the work is happening. Silence is not absence. Silence is gestation. When you feel a sudden thought of them without reason, when you sense an emotional wave that seems to come from nowhere, when you feel calm certainty one moment and intensity the next, that is not imagination. That is interaction on a level the senses cannot measure. They are thinking of you without knowing why. They are feeling your name rise in their chest without attaching a story to it. They are reacting to you internally before they ever react externally. You see, people do not suddenly message without cause. They reach out because a feeling becomes unbearable to ignore. That feeling builds long before the message is sent. And that feeling is not created by coincidence, it is created by alignment. When you occupy the assumption that you are important to them, you generate emotional gravity. They may resist it consciously, they may distract themselves, they may try to rationalize it away. But emotion does not obey logic, it obeys persistence. Your SP does not need to know why they feel drawn to you. They do not need to understand the source of the pull. All they know is that you cross their mind at inconvenient times, that memories feel more vivid than they should, that your energy feels familiar, warm, and unresolved, that no matter how busy they are, a quiet sense of you remains present. And the more you relax into the knowing that this is true, the stronger that pull becomes. The mistake most people make is trying to send energy instead of becoming it. They visualize to make something happen rather than to accept that it already is. But the moment you stop trying to influence and start assuming inevitability, everything changes. You are not trying to make them feel you, you are accepting that they already do. And acceptance is the most powerful command consciousness understands. When you walk through your day carrying the inner knowing that you matter to them, you move differently, you think differently, you stop checking, you stop waiting, you stop measuring time. And in that stillness, your assumption gains authority. Because the state you occupy is no longer needy, it is sovereign. It does not ask for permission to be true, it simply is. And this is where the deepest shift occurs. When you no longer ask, do they feel me? And instead, live as someone who is already felt, already remembered, already emotionally present in another's world. The question dissolves. And when the question dissolves, the answer must appear physically. They begin to feel an urge they cannot trace, a curiosity that grows without reason, a softness toward you that wasn't there before. They replay conversations, they imagine interactions, they feel nostalgia for moments that have not yet happened. And the most confusing part for them is that it feels natural. It feels like something they didn't choose. but also cannot resist. This is not manipulation, this is resonance. This is what happens when two people are connected by assumption rather than effort. You are not invading their mind, you are meeting them in a shared state that already exists. Consciousness is not divided, it is singular. And when you move within it, those linked to your awareness move with you. The reason you must stop watching the clock is because time does not create alignment. Identity does. Time only delivers what identity has already selected. The moment you decide internally that you are someone who is deeply felt, the moment you accept that your emotional presence lingers with them even in absence, you have already crossed the bridge. The rest is simply the unfolding. You may not see signs immediately, but signs are not the cause, they are the effect. The real work happens in the quiet moments when you choose what to believe about yourself, when you choose to feel chosen instead of waiting to be chosen, when you choose to feel connected instead of questioning connection, when you choose to feel secure instead of seeking reassurance. And as you do this, something subtle but undeniable happens. Your SPE begins to mirror your inner certainty. They become more open, more receptive, more emotionally available without understanding why. They feel safer reaching out. They feel less resistance. They feel like contacting you is the most natural thing in the world. You must understand this deeply. No one feels drawn to someone who is waiting. They feel drawn to someone who already knows. Knowing carries weight. Knowing carries calm. Knowing carries inevitability. And inevitability is magnetic. So when you sit quietly and feel the truth that you are already emotionally present in their life, do not rush the feeling. Do not force images. Simply rest in the knowing that your presence is felt, even now, especially now. Let that knowing settle into your body until it feels normal, until it feels boring, until it feels obvious. Because when it becomes obvious to you, it must become visible to the world. Your SP does not suddenly wake up one day and decide to care. They awaken gradually to something that has been growing within them the entire time, and that growth is responding to your inner decision, your inner acceptance, your inner authority. They feel you more than you think because you are more powerful than you really. Z. Not powerful in effort, but powerful in assumption. Not powerful in action, but powerful in identity. And once you stop doubting that, once you stop checking for evidence and start living from certainty, the distance collapses. The message comes, the call happens, the meeting unfolds. But by the time it does, you will already know, because the outer world will only be catching up to what you accepted long ago. And when it arrives, it will not feel surprising. It will feel familiar. It will feel inevitable. It will feel like something that was always meant to happen, because in consciousness, it already had. And that is the moment you realize the truth. They were never disconnected from you. They were only waiting for you to remember who you are. And once you truly grasp this, you begin to notice how little effort is actually required. You stop trying to hold the feeling and instead allow it to hold you. You realize that connection is not something you manufacture, it is something you allow. The moment you stop tightening around the desire and start resting in the assumption that it is already alive, already active, already responding, the inner tension dissolves, and in that dissolution, power emerges quietly. You begin to sense that you do not need to think about them constantly for them to feel you. In fact, the opposite is true. The more natural your knowing becomes, the more space you give the connection to breathe. Obsession repels, but certainty attracts. When you are no longer mentally pulling on the bond begins to pull on them. When you release the need to monitor, you allow the unseen movement to accelerate. There is a reason why the strongest moments of manifestation often occur when you least expect them. It is because in those moments, you are no longer interfering with doubt. You are no longer splitting your awareness between having and not having. You are simply being, and being is the language consciousness understands most fluently. Your SP does not feel you because you are thinking about them. They feel you because you have assumed a version of yourself that is already meaningful in their world. And meaning is felt, not reasoned. Meaning presses itself into the heart. Meaning returns again and again without invitation. Meaning refuses to be dismissed. They may go about their day believing they are focused on other things, but then a pause comes, a quiet moment, a space between thoughts, and there you are, not as a memory they deliberately summon, but as a presence that arrives on its own. They feel a warmth, a curiosity, sometimes even an ache they cannot explain. And because the mind does not like mystery, it searches for justification, but the feeling does not require logic. It only requires acknowledgement. This is why you must stop underestimating your inner world. What you accept as true within yourself is not confined to you. It is shared, reflected, and experienced by those connected to your awareness. You are not influencing them from afar, you are meeting them at the level where all experience originates. And at that level, distance does not exist. When you sit quietly and feel into the idea that they miss you, you are not begging the universe to create longing. You are aligning yourself with a state where longing already exists. And when you align with it, the one who corresponds to that state must experience it. Not because they are forced to, but because it is the natural consequence of shared consciousness. This is why forcing techniques never last. They come from fear. They come from the belief that without constant effort, nothing will happen. But the truth is that effort is often the very thing delaying the result. Effort implies lack, and lack sends a signal that contradicts your desire. But ease, assumption, and quiet knowing send a signal that cannot be ignored. You begin to notice that when you stop chasing inner reassurance, you feel calmer, more grounded, more whole. And this wholeness changes the quality of your desire. It is no longer desperate. It is no longer urgent. It comes steady, grounded, and confident. And confidence does not shout. It does not rush. It waits not because it doubts, but because it knows. Your SP feels this shift. They may not articulate it, but they sense a difference. The energy between you feels less strained, less heavy, more inviting. They feel less pressure and more pull, less obligation and more desire. And desire, when allowed to grow naturally, becomes irresistible. You must understand that every relationship exists first as an inner agreement. The outer behavior is only the final expression. If you want to change how they show up, you do not start with them. You start with the role you assign yourself in your own mind. Are you the one waiting to be chosen, or are you the one who is already cherished? Are you the one hoping to be remembered, or are you the one who is unforgettable? The moment you answer that question internally, the dynamic shifts. And when the dynamic shifts, behavior must follow, but not instantly, not mechanically. It unfolds organically, in a way that feels natural to everyone involved. This is why it feels real when it happens. This is why it lasts. Your SP feels you more than you think, because you are not merely an external figure in their life, you are a symbol within their emotional landscape. And symbols carry weight far beyond logic. They shape feeling, reaction, and desire at a level beneath awareness. So when doubt arises, and it will, you do not fight it. You simply return to the knowing. You remind yourself that feeling precedes action, that inner movement always comes before outer confirmation. You do not argue with the silence. You understand it. You respect it. You allow it to do its work. And as you continue to live from this place, something remarkable happens. You stop needing signs. You stop asking for reassurance. You stop checking circumstances. Because the connection feels alive within you. And anything that feels alive within you must eventually express itself without. You are no longer waiting for them to feel you. You know they already do. And in that knowing, the bridge between you continues to form, unseen but inevitable, strengthening with every quiet moment of acceptance, every relaxed breath of certainty, every time you choose to trust what cannot yet be seen. And as this knowing deepens, you begin to recognize how subtle the connection truly is. It does not arrive as drama or intensity all the time. Often it arrives as calm, as familiarity, as a sense of inevitability that feels almost ordinary. And that is how you know it is real. What is forced feels urgent. What is natural feels quiet and steady. You may notice that thoughts of them no longer carry anxiety. There is no rush to interpret, no need to attach meaning. They simply pass through you like a gentle reminder. And in those moments, without effort, You are impressing the state of being remembered, of being felt, of being emotionally present. You are not affirming to convince yourself. You are acknowledging what already is. Your SP feels this calm more than anything else. They feel the absence of pressure. They feel the release of expectation. And paradoxically, this absence draws them closer. Because when there is no demand, desire awakens on its own. When there is no chase, curiosity grows. When there is no fear of loss, attachment softens into longing. You are no longer trying to occupy their thoughts. You are occupying your own sense of worth. And worth is magnetic. Worth does not ask to be validated, it assumes itself. And assumption shapes experience at every level. This is why moments of detachment often precede contact. Not detachment from desire, but detachment from need. When you no longer need them to confirm your value, you allow them to approach freely. And freedom is what allows genuine connection to form. Your SP begins to feel an emotional openness they did not expect. They may feel drawn to check in on you, to see how you are, to hear your voice, not because they were pushed, but because something within them feels unfinished, something feels unresolved, and unresolved emotion seeks expression. You must trust that inner shifts always precede outer movement. The seed breaks underground long before the sprout appears. If you dig it up to check, you delay the growth. But if you leave it undisturbed, it unfolds in perfect timing. So you stop digging, you stop checking, you stop asking whether it's working. You understand that asking implies doubt, and doubt splits energy. Instead, you choose alignment. You choose to live as someone who is already emotionally connected, already valued, already influential in the heart of another. And this choice is felt, it reverberates, it creates coherence between you and them. They begin to mirror your calm, your certainty, your openness. The relationship dynamic shifts without a conversation ever taking place. You might even notice that when they do reach out, it feels normal, not shocking, not overwhelming, just right. Because internally, you have already adjusted to the reality of connection. The outer expression is simply catching up. This is why impatience dissolves when assumption solidifies. Time no longer feels heavy. Waiting no longer feels painful. Because you are no longer waiting. You are living from fulfillment, not toward it. And as you continue to do this, the bond strengthens in ways you cannot fully articulate. The connection becomes less about outcome and more about resonance, less about possession and more about mutual recognition. Your SP feels you not because you demand attention, but because your presence has become a constant, gentle truth in their inner world. You are there in the pauses, in the spaces between thoughts, in the moments when they least expect it. And the more you allow this to be effortless, the more undeniable it becomes. Because what is real does not need to be forced, it only needs to be accepted. And with that acceptance, a deeper layer of understanding settles in. You realize that nothing was ever missing. There was never a gap to close, never a connection to repair. There was only a shift in awareness waiting to occur. When you stop labeling distance as separation, you stop feeding the illusion that something is wrong. And the moment nothing feels wrong, everything begins to align. You start to notice how the idea of them thinking about you feels less like hope and more like memory, as if it has already happened, as if it has always been happening. This is not fantasy, this is recognition, recognition of a truth that existed before doubt introduced itself. And recognition carries a quiet confidence that cannot be shaken by circumstances. Your SP responds to this recognition at a level beyond words. They feel a sense of familiarity intensify, a sense that you are emotionally close even when physically absent. And because the mind seeks coherence, they begin to adjust their behavior to match the feeling. They may not understand why they feel compelled to reach out, but the impulse feels honest, sincere, and necessary. This is how inner agreement becomes outer movement, not through force, but through alignment. When the inside matches the outcome, the outside has no option but to follow. Reality is obedient, but it waits for clarity. And clarity comes when you stop wavering between belief and doubt. You begin to carry yourself differently, even when alone. Your inner dialogue softens. Your thoughts become less reactive. You no longer imagine worst case scenarios because they no longer feel believable. The only story that feels natural is the one where you are wanted, where your presence matters, where connection flows easily. And this inner story is not confined to imagination. It becomes the lens through which you experience everything. And lenses shape perception. Perception shapes response. Response shapes reality. Your SP feels this shift as a subtle but undeniable change in how they perceive you. They may feel more comfortable expressing themselves, more open to vulnerability, more willing to revisit emotions they once avoided. And they will not trace this back to a technique or a moment. They will simply feel that something between you has become more real. This is why inner stability is more powerful than constant visualization. When you stabilize the feeling of being chosen, you stop oscillating between hope and fear. You anchor yourself in certainty, and certainty creates momentum without effort. You may even find yourself less emotionally reactive to their behavior. Messages or silence no longer dictate your state, because your state is no longer dependent on them. It is rooted in you. And when your emotional center is within yourself, others feel safe gravitating toward you. This safety is felt. It is sensed as warmth, as ease, as emotional permission. Your SP feels that being near you, emotionally or physically, does not require defense. And where there is no defense, there is openness. You must trust that this openness is forming, even when you cannot see it. Just because something is invisible does not mean it is inactive. The most profound transformations occur quietly without spectacle, and as you continue to live from this inner alignment, you realize that you are no longer seeking confirmation. You are allowing revelation. You are no longer chasing connection. You are embodying it. Your SP feels you because you feel whole, and wholeness is contagious. And this wholeness changes the way time feels. Moments no longer stretch with anticipation or contract with fear. Time becomes neutral, almost irrelevant, because your inner state is no longer dependent on when something happens. You are not counting days or are interpreting pauses. You are simply present, and presence is powerful because it leaves no room for doubt to anchor itself. When you are present in this way, your thoughts about them are no longer charged. They are gentle, calm, almost affectionate without attachment. And this is the exact emotional tone that allows connection to deepen naturally. Attachment tightens, affection opens, and opening is felt instantly, even across silence. Your SP begins to experience you not as a question, but as a feeling, not as someone they need to figure out, but as someone who feels familiar and emotionally accessible. This is why they may find themselves thinking of you during ordinary moments, while doing something mundane, while drifting into sleep, while pausing between tasks. You arise not as a disruption, but as a presence that belongs. And belonging is one of the strongest emotional anchors there is. People return to what feels like home long before they understand why. They seek what feels grounding, what feels emotionally coherent, what feels safe. And safety is not created by reassurance, it is created by inner steadiness. As you continue to embody this steadiness, you stop rehearsing conversations in your mind. You stop planning outcomes. You stop imagining what you would say or how they might respond, because those mental rehearsals were never about preparation. They were about control. And when control dissolves, trust takes its place. Trust is not passive, it is deeply active. Tive. It is a decision to assume that what is unfolding is already aligned with you. It is the refusal to interpret uncertainty as rejection. It is the willingness to remain open even when the path is not yet visible. Your SP feels this trust as emotional permission. They feel less pressure to perform, to defend, to withdraw. They feel allowed to feel what they feel. And when people feel allowed, honesty surfaces, desire surfaces, curiosity surfaces. This is why the connection strengthens even without interaction, because interaction was never the source, inner agreement was. And now that the agreement has shifted, the expression must eventually follow. You may sense moments when the connection feels especially vivid, Moments when you feel suddenly calm, suddenly sure, suddenly warm without reason. Those moments are not random, they are alignment points. They are instances where your inner state and theirs briefly overlap in awareness. You feel it because you are receptive to it, but you do not cling to those moments. You let them pass naturally, because clinging turns awareness into need, and need collapses openness. You remain relaxed, grounded, trusting, and in that relaxed trust, you are no longer asking whether they feel you. You are allowing them to. And allowing is the most effortless form of influence there is. And as you continue allowing, something very subtle happens within you. The desire no longer feels like something ahead of you, it feels like something surrounding you. You are not moving toward it, you are moving within it. And when desire shifts from being a destination to being an atmosphere, resistance dissolves completely. You begin to sense that even when you are not consciously thinking about your SP, the connection does not pause, it does not switch off, it does not weaken. It simply exists, steady and quiet, like a current flowing beneath the surface. And currents do not need attention to move. They move because that is their nature. Your SP feels this steadiness. They feel that you are not emotionally grabbing at them anymore. And this absence of grasping creates space for genuine feeling to emerge. What was once muted becomes clearer. What was once avoided becomes noticeable. Emotions that were suppressed begin to rise without being summoned. They may suddenly wonder why they are thinking about you more often, why your presence feels closer than it used to, why memories involving you feel warmer, more vivid, more emotionally charged. And the mind may try to distract itself, but feeling has momentum. Once it starts moving, it seeks expression. This is why you must not interrupt the process with fear. Fear only arises when you forget who is leading. And you are leading, not by control, but by embodiment. The version of you that feels secure, valued, and remembered is already setting the tone, and the world must follow the tone that is set. You might notice that old assumptions no longer hold weight. Stories you owe NCE told yourself about why it wouldn't work, why they wouldn't choose you, why the timing was wrong. Those stories begin to feel hollow. They no longer match your inner reality. And when a story loses emotional credibility, it loses creative power. Your inner dialogue becomes simpler, quieter. You do not need to convince yourself anymore. The truth feels self evident, and what feels self evident internally always becomes self evident externally. Your SP responds to this shift by softening. Even if they don't act immediately, their inner stance toward you changes. Resistance gives way to curiosity. Curiosity gives way to openness. Openness gives way to desire. And desire, when unopposed, naturally moves toward fulfillment. You are no longer waiting for the moment when everything changes. You are living from the place where it already has. And this is why impatience fades. Not because you no longer care, but because caring no longer hurts. The connection feels light now, not heavy with expectation, not fragile. It feels resilient, grounded, alive, and aliveness does not need reassurance. It does not need proof every moment. It simply continues. And as this continues, you remain where you are, centered, aware, receptive, allowing the unseen movement to keep unfolding in its own way, at its own pace, knowing that what is already felt cannot remain unexpressed forever. And in remaining centered like this, you begin to understand that nothing outside of you has the authority to decide the outcome. Circumstances lose their power to intimidate. Past experiences lose their grip. Even silence loses its meaning, because meaning is something you assign, and you are no longer assigning meaning to absence. You are assigning meaning to presence, inner presence, emotional presence, energetic presence. You notice that when thoughts of your SP arise now, they do not trigger longing, they trigger recognition. It feels less like missing and more like remembering. Remembering that connection is not created through effort, but revealed through alignment. And this remembering stabilizes you even more. Your SP feels this stabilization as emotional clarity. They may not call it that, but they sense a shift. You no longer feel distant to them, even if there is physical distance. You no longer feel unreachable, Even if there is no communication, you feel available without asking, present without intruding. This is why they begin to feel safe thinking about you, safe feeling emotions they once suppressed, safe imagining possibilities they once dismissed. When safety appears, honesty follows, and honesty leads people back to what they truly want. You are no longer trying to hold the connection together. You trust that it holds itself. Because what is rooted in consciousness does not require maintenance through fear, it sustains itself through coherence. And coherence feels like calm certainty. It feels like knowing without needing to say it out loud. It feels like being at ease with not knowing the details while trusting the direction completely. As you embody this, your emotional state becomes less reactive and more responsive. You respond to life instead of bracing against it. And this relaxed responsiveness changes how others experience you. They feel drawn not by intensity, but by authenticity. Your SP begins to associate you with ease, with emotional honesty, with a sense of grounding they may not find elsewhere. And people return to what grounds them, even if they don't consciously understand why. You may find that moments of joy appear unrelated to them, yet feel connected. You feel lighter, more open, more engaged with life. And this openness is not a distraction from your desire, it is evidence that you are aligned with it. Fulfillment always begins as a state before it becomes an event. This is why you do not rush the unfolding. You do not demand timelines. You do not interpret delays as denials. You understand that the inner shift is already complete, and the outer expression is simply moving through its own sequence. And so you remain here, steady and receptive, allowing the connection to continue forming, deepening, clarifying, knowing that what is already alive within awareness does not fade, does not disappear, and does not reverse. It only continues to move toward visibility, one quiet alignment at a time. And as it continues to move toward visibility, you notice that your relationship with uncertainty has changed. Uncertainty no longer feels like a threat. It feels like space. Space for things to arrange themselves without interference. Space for emotions to surface naturally. Space for truth to rise without being forced into shape. You no longer feel the need to analyze every inner shift or emotional wave. You allow them to pass through you without attaching urgency, because you understand now that urgency was never intuition. It was fear disguising itself as concern, and fear dissolves when you trust your inner position. Your SP feels this absence of urgency as relief. They no longer sense an unspoken demand. They no longer feel pressure to respond in a certain way or to move faster than their inner alignment allows. And because of this relief, they begin to feel more honest with themselves, more willing to admit what they feel, more open to acknowledging the connection they tried to minimize. You must understand that people resist feelings only when they feel cornered by them. When feeling is allowed to breathe, it unfolds gracefully, and you are allowing it now, not just for yourself, but for them as well. This is why the connection matures quietly. It does not explode into existence. It settles, it roots, it becomes stable, and stability is what allows something to last. You may sense that your imagination has shifted too. You are no longer imagining dramatic scenarios. Your inner images are simple, natural, ordinary moments, shared, calm conversations, effortless closeness, and this simplicity is powerful because it feels believable. And what feels believable is what manifests most effortlessly. Your SP responds to this believability by adjusting their inner expectations. The idea of connection with you feels less like a risk and more like a return, less like something new and more like something remembered. You are not waiting for a breakthrough moment anymore. You are living in the after effect of one. The breakthrough happened when you stopped trying to make something happen and allowed yourself to become the version of you for whom it already has. And because of this, you remain steady even when nothing seems to change on the surface, because you know that surface movement is always the last stage. The deepest shifts have already taken place where they matter most. You stay with this knowing gently. You do not clutch it. You do not test it. You simply live from it. And in doing so, you allow the unseen process to keep unfolding naturally, confidently, and without resistance, continuing to move forward layer by layer, moment by moment, toward its own clear expression. And as this unfolding continues, you begin to notice how deeply settled you feel in yourself. There is no longer internal argument about whether this connection is real or imagined. It feels lived in, familiar, quietly present. You do not need to remind yourself of it because it no longer leaves you. It has become part of your emotional posture, the way you stand inwardly. You move through your day with a soft confidence that does not announce itself. You are not proving anything to anyone. You are not preparing explanations. You are simply aligned, and alignment has a way of rearranging things without noise. Your SP feels this alignment as emotional clarity. They may suddenly realize that thinking of you feels different now, less conflicted, less heavy, more honest. They may notice that the idea of reaching out no longer feels complicated. It feels simple, and simplicity is what action follows most naturally. You must understand that the mind always follows the path of least resistance. And when you remove resistance within yourself, you remove it within them as well, because resistance was never between two people. It was always within perception. You are no longer assigning meaning to delays. You are no longer asking what silence means. Silence means nothing when certainty is present, and certainty does not need interpretation. It only needs to be lived. As this becomes your natural state, your emotional independence strengthens. Not independence from desire, but independence from outcome. You care deeply, yet you are not destabilized. You want, yet you are not incomplete. And this balance is rare. It is felt immediately. Your SP feels drawn to this balance because it feels real. It feels grounded. It feels safe to approach. They are not meeting a version of you that needs something from them. They are meeting a version of you that is something with them. You may notice that your inner conversations have softened. There is no inner pleading, no bargaining, no rehearsing. There is simply allowance, and allowance creates room for authenticity. And in this room, emotions clarify themselves. What was once confusion begins to settle. What was once avoidance begins to lose its purpose. Because when there is nothing to defend against, defense collapses on its own. You stay here, not waiting, not watching, not controlling, but allowing life to continue responding to the inner position you have already chosen. And as long as you remain in this quiet alignment, the movement continues forward, naturally and inevitably, still unfolding, still adjusting, still arranging itself toward expression without needing to announce when or how. And as it keeps arranging itself, you begin to see how little energy you now spend thinking about what could go wrong. That entire mental habit has loosened its grip. You are no longer bracing for disappointment or rehearsing emotional defenses. Those patterns belong to a version of you that was unsure of their own place. That version has quietly dissolved. In its place is a steadiness that does not fluctuate with external signals. You feel grounded even when there is no visible progress. And this grounding is not passive, it is deeply creative, because what you hold steady within yourself becomes the dominant signal reality responds to. Your SP feels this steadiness as emotional trust. They sense that the connection no longer comes with expectation or pressure. They feel that they are free to approach you as they are, not as who they think they should be. And freedom invites honesty. Honesty begins internally. They start admitting things to themselves they may have avoided before. Feelings they tried to dismiss return with clarity. Questions they once pushed away surface again, not as confusion, but as curiosity. And curiosity always moves toward experience. You may notice that when thoughts of them appear now, they feel warm rather than sharp. There is no ache attached, just presence. And presence is what sustains connection far more than longing ever could. You understand now that longing was never proof of love. It was proof of separation in thought. And that separation has closed, not because something happened outside of you, but because you stopped entertaining the idea that it existed. As this becomes natural, your inner world feels quieter, less crowded with what ifs, less reactive, more spacious. And in this spaciousness, intuition becomes clearer. You sense when to move and when to be still without overthinking. Your SP feels this clarity as coherence. Interactions feel smoother even before they happen. Conversations feel easier to imagine. Contact feels less intimidating. Because emotional coherence dissolves friction before it appears. You are no longer waiting for permission to feel secure. You are no longer asking for signs. You are simply living from the assumption that what matters is already aligned. And because of this, the unfolding continues without resistance, without interruption, without urgency, moving forward quietly, naturally, responding to the state you remain faithful to, still in motion, still shaping itself, without yet needing to declare its final form. And as this motion continues, you notice that your awareness of them becomes effortless. You no longer chase thoughts or linger on scenarios. They simply appear in consciousness like gentle reminders, naturally, without agitation. And in these moments, you feel their presence as though it were always meant to be, not something borrowed or imagined. This is the subtle power of inner alignment, where feeling precedes form and reality bends to the state you inhabit. Your SP senses this effortless presence even if they are unaware of the source. They feel drawn to you not through persuasion or external insistence, but through the quiet, undeniable weight of your emotional constancy. They sense that you are already present in their world, even when the physical interaction has yet to manifest. It is the invisible rhythm of consciousness responding to itself. You begin to realize that the greatest influence is not in action, but in being. When you are calm, secure, and internally aligned, your SP reflects that back without effort. Their thoughts, feelings, and inclinations begin to echo the state you occupy. You do not have to wonder if they are thinking of you. Every pause, every return of attention, every gentle recollection is a silent acknowledgement of the energy you radiate. Moments of absence no longer feel threatening. Silence no longer feels like emptiness. Instead, you notice the subtle currents, the unspoken stirrings of emotion that traverse invisible spaces. They think of you without planning it. They feel you without naming it. They are responding to a signal that cannot be denied because it originates from the very source of connection, your own consciousness. You may notice that they seem to appear in your imagination unexpectedly, in memories, or in fleeting mental images that feel startlingly real. Do not mistake this for idle fantasy. It is interaction at a level deeper than the senses, a meeting that transcends time and space. And the more you allow this to be natural, the more it strengthens the invisible bond, quietly compelling outer circumstances to align with inner reality. Your SP begins to act in small ways, you unconsciously at first. They may reach out casually, remember details they did not notice before, or feel an emotional pull toward you that surprises them. And because they are responding from their own internal awakening rather than external pressure, every action feels authentic, inevitable, and right. You no longer feel compelled to orchestrate outcomes. You are aware that the inner world is the true stage where connection is scripted. By living fully from the state of being felt, remembered, and desired, you create the conditions for outer events to unfold effortlessly. And the beauty of this is that you remain centered, unattached to timing, and free from the turbulence of expectation. Even when you are physically apart, your influence continues. They are thinking of you while doing mundane tasks, pausing unconsciously to remember a detail about you, feeling a tug toward you that they cannot name. This is the invisible conversation, a communication of states that requires no words, no gestures, no visible signs. It is pure resonance. And as your awareness of this deep interplay grows, you realize that impatience has no place. There is no need to rush or push. The currents of consciousness are already moving, quietly orchestrating responses, shaping events, and aligning desires. The connection is alive, continuously responding to the certainty you hold, strengthening with each silent affirmation of your inner state, still flowing, still deepening, still weaving its way into visible manifestation without interruption or force. And as this flow continues, you notice that your energy itself has become magnetic, not in a way that demands attention, but in a way that naturally draws. Your calm, your certainty, your quiet knowing, these are felt far beyond what the senses can measure. Your SP may not articulate it, may not consciously recognize it, but it resonates deep within them. It stirs memories, emotions, and inclinations that have always existed but were dormant, waiting for the alignment you now embody. You begin to understand that the inner state you maintain is the true architect of experience. Every thought you release, every tension you let go of, every quiet assumption you hold in certainty, these are the invisible threads pulling your SP closer, knitting a connection that feels inevitable. They feel drawn because resistance has softened, because the weight of presence is undeniable, because the story inside you has already declared completion. Even if they resist consciously, subconsciously they cannot. The inner world always asserts itself externally, and you do not need to chase, to plead, or to explain. You simply remain in the state of being already known, already remembered, already valued. And in this state, time does not hinder, distance does not weaken, silence does not erase. You notice moments when they cross your mind unexpectedly with feelings that are unfamiliar to them. A longing that feels sudden yet persistent. A warmth in their chest when your name appears. These are the subtle signs of response at a level beyond reasoning. They do not need to understand why, they only need to feel it. And feeling is action without effort. Your presence within yourself becomes the foundation of this influence. You no longer vacillate between hope and doubt. You no longer rehearse what could or could not happen. You simply inhabit the state of being felt, being desired, being emotionally significant. And that state, unwavering and alive, projects outward, shaping perception, stirring feeling, and opening pathways that were always available but invisible until now. You begin to notice that your SP's behavior shifts without apparent cause. They may smile at memories that involve you, speak of topics that lead to you unconsciously, or feel an inexplicable urge to connect. These are not manipulations of thought. They are natural responses to the emotional weight and coherence you carry. They feel compelled because energy always mirrors energy, because feeling always seeks its counterpart, because what is true internally cannot remain hidden externally. And as you continue to remain in this steady, knowing state, you realize that the unfolding is continuous. The connection deepens without forcing. The bond strengthens without visible effort. The unseen align, end, grows with each quiet choice to trust the inner reality. Your SP feels this more than you imagine, more than words or gestures could ever convey. And as long as you remain here, calm, certain, unwavering, the process continues, moving forward invisibly, inevitably, and irresistibly, still unfolding, still responding, still expanding, still drawing them toward the resonance you now embody completely. And so, the truth you must carry with unwavering certainty is this: your SP feels you far more than you can imagine. It is not in their words, not in their actions, and not in the timing of life that this is proven. It is in the invisible currents of consciousness, in the emotional resonance that cannot be denied. You are not waiting for them to act. They are already responding to the state you embody. When you live from calm certainty, from quiet knowing, from the deep inner assumption that you are already present, already valued, and already unforgettable, the world has no choice but to reflect it back. Your power does not lie in chasing, in convincing, or in striving. It lies in becoming. Become the presence they feel, the energy they cannot resist, the certainty they unknowingly long for. Stand unwavering, and everything will follow. Remember, what is assumed as true within your consciousness is always inevitable in their reality. You are felt, you are seen, you are remembered, and the universe conspires quietly yet irresistibly to ensure that they cannot escape the truth. Oh, F you.